Pause for just a moment before we begin. How did you wake up this morning? What was the very first thought that crossed your mind when consciousness returned? Was it gentle, like a friend greeting you? Or was it harsh, like a drill sergeant barking orders before your feet even touched the floor? For most people, that first moment of awareness brings not peace, but panic. The immediate rush of everything that must be done, everything that went wrong yesterday, everything that feels impossible about the day ahead. I know because I have been there, standing at the edge of consciousness each morning, dreading the return to my own thoughts. For years, my first words upon waking were not words of welcome to myself, but words of dread. Oh God, another day. How will I get through this? That was my morning prayer, if you could call it prayer. It was more like a daily surrender to suffering before I had even opened my eyes. There was one particular morning I will never forget. I had been struggling with my health, my self-worth, my entire relationship with being alive. The alarm had not even gone off yet, but something stirred me awake in the pre-dawn darkness. And as always, that familiar voice began its morning assault. Here we go again, Louise. Another day of failure waiting to happen. You are exhausted before you even begin. How pathetic. I remember lying there in that gray light, feeling the weight of those words settle into my chest like stones. My body was still soft from sleep, but my mind was already hard with judgment. But something was different that morning. Maybe it was exhaustion from years of this internal cruelty. Maybe it was simply divine timing. But I found myself thinking, what if I spoke to myself the way I would speak to a beloved child waking from sleep? What if the first voice I heard each day was not the voice of criticism, but the voice of love? It seemed almost revolutionary, this idea that I could choose my first thought instead of letting it choose me. So before I opened my eyes, before I allowed the familiar stream of worries to begin, I placed my hand over my heart and whispered something I had never said before. Good morning, dear one. You are safe. You are loved. Today is a gift. The words felt strange in my mouth, like speaking a foreign language, but my body understood immediately. I felt my shoulders drop, my breath deepen, my heart slow to a more peaceful rhythm. It was as if I had been holding my breath for years and finally remembered how to exhale. That was the beginning of everything changing. Not just my mornings, but my entire relationship with waking up, with consciousness itself, with the simple act of being alive in a body that deserves tenderness rather than attack. If you have been starting your days at war with yourself, if your first thoughts each morning are weapons instead of welcome, then you understand why this matters so deeply. You know the cost of beginning each day as your own enemy instead of your own friend. If your mornings carry weight that was never meant to be yours, if you are tired of waking up already defeated before the day begins, then perhaps you are ready to walk with me weekly. Every teaching here is a different pathway to the same destination, peace within yourself, especially in those tender moments when consciousness returns. Subscribe when your heart gives you permission, not because you should, but because something in you recognizes truth when it hears it. In the next 60 minutes, I will show you exactly which words can transform not only your morning, but your entire relationship with the act of awakening. How the first voice you hear each day becomes the narrator of your life. How one simple phrase, whispered with love instead of spoken with fear, can change the chemical composition of your blood, the rhythm of your nervous system, the very foundation upon which your day is built. But before we go any deeper, you need to experience this for yourself. Not later, not tomorrow morning, but right now. I want you to prepare for something sacred. Whether you are sitting or standing, I need you to create the conditions of awakening. If you can, lie down comfortably, just as you would in your bed. If you cannot lie down, then simply close your eyes and allow your body to soften as if you were about to drift into sleep. This is not just an exercise. It is a practice in rewiring the most vulnerable moment of your day. Take 3 deep breaths with me now. With each exhale, let yourself sink deeper into softness, as if you are returning to the peaceful place between sleeping and waking. Breathe in slowly, feeling the air fill your lungs like a gentle tide. Breathe out slowly, releasing any tension you are carrying from this day. Again, breathe in peace. Breathe out everything that does not serve you. One more time. Breathe in love. Breathe out the need to hurry or worry or judge. Now I want you to imagine that you are asleep, completely at rest. Your body is soft, your mind is quiet, and you are floating in that peaceful space where nothing is demanded of you. You are safe, you are held, you are exactly where you need to be. And now, imagine that it is time to wake up. But instead of the jarring alarm or the rushing thoughts that usually pull you into consciousness, there is only gentleness, only love. Before you open your eyes, before you return fully to wakefulness, I want you to place your hand over your heart if you can. Feel the steady rhythm there, the faithful beating that has continued all night without your effort or worry. This heart has never abandoned you, not for a single moment. It deserves your first greeting of the day. Now, with your hand on your heart and your eyes still closed, I want you to whisper these words as if you are greeting the most precious person you know. Say softly, like a loving parent would speak to a child waking from peaceful sleep. Good morning, my dear one. Today is a gift. You are safe and loved. Say it again, even more gently. Good morning, my dear one. Today is a gift. You are safe and loved. One more time. Let the words carry all the tenderness you have ever wanted to receive. Good morning, my dear one. Today is a gift. You are safe and loved. Now slowly, as if you are genuinely waking up for the first time in your life, open your eyes. Let the first thing you see be received with gratitude, as if everything around you exists to support and welcome you. Notice how your body feels different when you wake up being spoken to with love instead of urgency or criticism. You have just planted a seed in the most fertile soil of your day, those first moments when your subconscious is still open, still receiving, still learning what kind of day this will be. Your nervous system has just received a completely different message than it usually gets. Instead of being told that waking up is the beginning of struggle, it has been told that waking up is the beginning of love. If you want to, write in the comments what it felt like to be spoken to with kindness first thing upon awakening. Maybe it was, I forgot I could be gentle with myself, or my body relaxed immediately, or I started crying because no one has ever spoken to me like that. There is no right response, only honest response. When you read the comments of others, you will see that thousands of people are learning to wake up in love instead of fear. Your willingness to try this, even once, makes you part of something beautiful. Some of you felt immediate relief when those words touched your consciousness. Some of you felt nothing yet, which is also perfect. Some of you felt resistance, perhaps even sadness, because it highlighted how harsh you usually are with yourself in those first moments of the day. All of these responses are welcome here. Your subconscious mind has just received a new instruction manual for waking up, and it is beginning to learn that consciousness can be soft instead of sharp, welcoming instead of warning. But this is only the beginning. Let me show you why these simple words carry so much power and what is actually happening in your body when you choose love over fear in those first precious moments of awareness. Perhaps you felt something shift in those moments of gentle awakening, or perhaps you felt nothing at all yet. Both are perfect responses to planting new seeds in old soil. Some of you may have felt resistance, that voice saying this is silly or pointless or too simple to matter. That voice deserves acknowledgement, not argument. It is trying to protect you in the only way it knows how, by keeping you safe in familiar patterns, even if those patterns cause pain. What you just experienced touches something profound about the nature of consciousness itself. There is a window of time each morning, approximately the first 20 minutes after awakening, when your brain exists in a state between sleeping and full awareness. Scientists call these alpha brain waves a natural state of heightened receptivity where your subconscious mind is still open, still taking instructions about what kind of reality to create. In this tender state, your nervous system is deciding whether to flood your body with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, or to release calming chemicals like serotonin and oxytocin. The very first thought you think, the very first words you speak to yourself, become the chemical instructions for your entire day. When you wake up thinking, here we go again, you are literally instructing every cell in your body to prepare for battle. When you wake up thinking, good morning, dear one, You are instructing every cell to prepare for love. Your body believes every thought you think. It does not question whether your thoughts are true or false, helpful or harmful. It simply responds with absolute loyalty to whatever message you send. If your first thought upon awakening is criticism or dread, your muscles tense, your breath becomes shallow, your digestive system slows, your immune system weakens. But if your first thought is gentle welcome, your entire physiology shifts toward healing, toward openness, toward the natural state of peace that is your birthright. This is not positive thinking or wishful fantasy. This is how your nervous system actually works. Think of your mind as a garden that has been planted for years with seeds of morning criticism. I should have done more yesterday. Today will be overwhelming. I am already behind. I am not enough. Those seeds have grown into habits, and those habits have created the landscape of your daily experience. But gardens can be replanted. New seeds can be sown. And morning consciousness is the most fertile time of all for this sacred replanting. Yet 3 specific resistances arise when people begin this practice, and I want to honor them because they are not obstacles but teachers. The first is what I call the doubt of simplicity. This is the voice that says, "One phrase cannot change my entire life. Years of struggle cannot be healed by words whispered in the morning." This voice forgets that every massive tree grew from a single seed, that every ocean is made of individual drops, that every transformation begins with one different choice repeated daily until it becomes truth. When this doubt arises, remember this: you are not trying to change your entire life in one morning. You are simply choosing to speak to yourself with love instead of criticism for 30 seconds. That is all. 30 seconds of kindness to the person who has been with you through everything, your entire precious self. This simple act sends ripples through your entire nervous system, your entire day, your entire way of being in the world. The second resistance is the fear of falseness. This is the voice that says, "But I do not believe I am dear or loved or safe, so saying these words feels like lying." I want you to understand something crucial. You are not trying to convince yourself of anything. You are simply planting seeds. A farmer does not stand over newly planted seeds, demanding that they grow immediately. A farmer waters them daily and trusts the process of life. Your willingness to speak gently to yourself is the water. Your daily repetition is the sun. Growth happens in its own time, in its own way, but it always happens when love tends the garden. The third resistance is the urgency of morning. This is the voice that says, "I do not have time for this. I barely have time to brush my teeth before rushing into my day." But consider this. If you spend 30 seconds in the morning greeting yourself with love, you may save yourself hours of stress, conflict, and exhaustion throughout the day. When you begin in peace, you move through your day with peace. When you begin in rushing and criticism, every interaction becomes harder. Every task becomes heavier. Every moment becomes more difficult. Your morning is listening to these words right now. Something in you is awakening to the possibility that consciousness does not have to be painful, that the transition from sleep to waking can be sacred instead of jarring. If you want to continue nurturing this awakening weekly, there are always new pathways to peace being shared here. Subscribe when your soul gives you permission, not when your mind thinks you should, but when something deeper recognizes the value of learning to wake up in love. Now let me show you how to deepen this practice, how to create multiple ways of greeting your consciousness with the tenderness it deserves. You now have the foundation, the single phrase that can transform any awakening. But consciousness is rich and complex, and there are many ways to tend this garden of gentle morning awareness. I want to offer you 3 additional practices, not as requirements, but as gifts. Choose the one that resonates most deeply, or use all 3 as your heart guides you. The first practice I call the pre-consciousness whisper. This happens in that liminal space when you sense you are beginning to wake up but have not yet opened your eyes. In this precious moment between sleeping and waking, your subconscious mind is still wide open, still receiving instructions about what kind of day this will be. Place your hand on your heart if you can, and speak directly to the part of you that has carried every fear, every wound, every moment of your life. Whisper as softly as you can, as if you are speaking to the most tender child. You are safe now, my dear one. I am here with you. We begin this day together. This is not affirmation or positive thinking. This is recognition of the truth that you have never been abandoned, not even for one moment, by the deepest love that lives within you. The second practice is for those moments when your old morning thoughts try to reclaim their territory. I call it conscious interruption. When you catch your mind beginning its familiar morning criticism, perhaps thoughts like, "Here we go again," or "I already feel tired," or "Today will be hard," pause immediately. Place your hand on your heart and consciously rewrite that first thought. Say gently, "Good morning, love. We are going to start this differently. Let us begin with kindness." This is not about fighting your old thoughts, but about offering them a different path, a more loving way to enter consciousness. You become the loving parent to your own awakening mind, gently redirecting it toward peace instead of allowing it to default to fear. Every time you make this conscious choice, you create new neural pathways, new habits of morning tenderness that eventually become as automatic as breathing. The brain learns through repetition, and every gentle interruption teaches your consciousness that love is always an option, even first thing in the morning. The third practice requires just 1 minute before sleep and connects your evening to your morning in a circle of loving intention. I call it the tomorrow's welcome. Before you close your eyes at night, write one sentence about how you want to greet yourself when you wake up. It might be, "Tomorrow I will wake up grateful for rest and ready to begin gently." Or, "When consciousness returns, I will speak to myself as I would to my dearest friend." Write this intention clearly, then place your hand on your heart and read it aloud as a promise to your future self. Your subconscious mind works powerfully during sleep, and this evening intention plants seeds that bloom when morning comes. Many people report that after just a few nights of this practice, they begin waking up naturally with gentler thoughts, as if their sleeping mind has been preparing all night to greet them with love. This is the power of conscious intention combined with the natural intelligence of sleep to heal and restore not just your body, but your relationship with your own consciousness. I want to tell you about a woman named Delphine who came to understand these practices in a way that changed everything for her. Delphine was 62 years old and had been waking up with anxiety for over 20 years. Every morning began the same way, with immediate worry about her grown children, her health, her finances, her worth as a human being. She described her morning thoughts as a tornado of fear that would sweep her up before she was even fully awake. When Delphine first heard about speaking gently to herself upon waking, she laughed and said it sounded like New Age nonsense. But she was desperate enough to try anything, so she began with just the simple phrase, "Good morning, dear one. You are safe." The first week felt forced and artificial, like she was lying to herself. But she continued anyway, partly from stubbornness and partly because something in her body seemed to relax when she spoke those words, even if her mind resisted them. By the third week, something had shifted. Delphine noticed that she was no longer waking up with her heart racing. The tornado of worry was still there, but it was not the very first thing she experienced upon awakening. There was now a moment, however brief, of peace before the familiar patterns began. She started to look forward to those few seconds of kindness with herself, and gradually began expanding them into minutes. 6 months later, Delphine told me that she had become a person who actually enjoyed waking up, something she had not experienced since childhood. Her adult children commented that she seemed lighter, less worried, more present with them. The woman who had been terrorized by her own morning thoughts had become someone who looked forward to greeting herself each day. This is the miracle of small practices repeated with love. Transformation does not require dramatic gestures or perfect understanding. It requires only willingness to treat yourself with basic kindness in the moments when you are most vulnerable to your own criticism. Every gentle morning builds upon the last until you realize that you have become someone completely different, not through force or effort, but through the simple act of learning to wake up in love instead of fear. For those of you who are ready to go deeper, who want to create a morning practice that not only changes your first moments of consciousness, but establishes a foundation of peace for your entire day. I want to share what I call the 5-minute morning sanctuary. This practice requires waking up just 5 minutes earlier than usual, but those 5 minutes can transform everything that follows. Set your alarm for 5 minutes before you normally wake up. When it sounds, resist the temptation to check your phone or immediately begin thinking about your day. Instead, remain lying down with your eyes closed. Begin with 3 deep breaths, welcoming yourself back to consciousness gently. Place both hands on your heart and say, "Thank you, body, for resting well. Thank you, heart, for beating faithfully all night. Thank you, breath, for continuing without my effort or worry." Then speak directly to your day before it officially begins. Good morning, beautiful day. I meet you with openness and trust. I am ready to move through you with grace and presence. Show me where love is needed today. After this greeting to your day, take a moment to set one gentle intention. Not a goal or demand, but a quality you want to embody. It might be, today I choose patience with myself and others. Or, today I notice beauty in ordinary moments. Or simply, today I remember that I am loved. This 5-minute sanctuary creates what neuroscientists call a buffer zone between sleep and the demands of daily life. Instead of being yanked from unconsciousness directly into activity, you give yourself time to arrive fully in your body, in your day, in your life. This transition time allows your nervous system to move from the restorative parasympathetic state of sleep into active consciousness without the shock that creates morning stress hormones. For moments when you wake up in panic or rush, when life demands that you move quickly and 5 minutes feels impossible, I want to give you an emergency morning reset. This takes less than 30 seconds and can be done anywhere, anytime. Place your hand on your heart, take one deep breath, and say internally, "I am here now. I am safe in this moment. That is all." 3 breaths, 1 hand on heart, 2 sentences of truth. This simple practice interrupts the cascade of morning stress and reminds your nervous system that whatever is happening, you are present to meet it with love instead of fear. What happens in your body when you consistently practice gentle awakening goes far beyond feeling better in the moment, though that alone would be worth everything. When you wake up speaking to yourself with love, you literally change the chemistry of your bloodstream. Instead of flooding your system with cortisol, the hormone of stress and fear, your body releases oxytocin, often called the love hormone, and serotonin, which creates feelings of calm well-being. Your immune system, which is suppressed by cortisol, begins to strengthen when your mornings are gentle. Your digestive system, which shuts down under stress, begins to function optimally when you start your day in peace. Your heart rate variability, which indicates a healthy nervous system, improves when you consistently wake up without shocking your system into fight or flight mode. Even your skin begins to look different when chronic morning stress is replaced by consistent morning love. This is the intelligence of your body responding to the intelligence of your choices. You are not just changing your thoughts, you are changing your physiology. You are not just feeling different, you are becoming different on a cellular level. Every morning that you choose gentleness over criticism, you are literally rewiring your brain to default to love instead of fear, to peace instead of panic, to welcome instead of worry. Think of your morning consciousness like a musical instrument that has been out of tune for years. Every harsh first thought, every critical morning voice, every awakening filled with dread has pulled the strings of your nervous system further and further from their natural harmony. But instruments can be retuned. With patience and consistent attention, with gentle adjustment day after day, the music of your life can return to its original beauty. This retuning takes time, typically 4 to 6 weeks, for new neural pathways to begin stabilizing, and 3 to 6 months for new patterns to feel completely natural. But you will notice changes much sooner. Within days, you may find that you sleep more deeply, knowing that awakening will be gentle. Within weeks, you may notice that your morning mood affects your entire household differently, that you move through your early hours with less tension and more grace. The ripple effects extend far beyond your personal morning experience. When you are not fighting yourself from the moment you wake up, you have more energy for creativity, for patience with others, for noticing beauty throughout your day. When you begin in peace, you attract peaceful circumstances. When you start your day as your own friend instead of your own critic, other people feel safer in your presence because you feel safer in your own presence. You are learning to become a sanctuary for yourself, and sanctuaries naturally become sanctuaries for others as well. I know that somewhere in your mind, perhaps in the background of your conscious thoughts, there is a question forming about time. How long will this really take? How many mornings of gentle practice before I naturally wake up in peace instead of panic? I want to be completely honest with you about this journey, because false promises serve no one, and realistic expectations serve everyone. The transformation of morning consciousness happens in layers, like the gradual lightening of sky before sunrise. You will not wake up tomorrow morning completely changed, speaking to yourself with perfect love after decades of morning criticism. But you will notice shifts, some subtle and some profound, and I want to prepare you for what to expect so that you can recognize and celebrate each milestone. In the first 3 days, expect resistance. Expect to forget completely some mornings and wake up in your old patterns. Expect the gentle words to feel strange in your mouth, foreign to your ears. Expect your mind to tell you this is pointless or silly or too simple to matter. This resistance is not a sign that the practice is not working. It is a sign that you are disrupting old patterns, and old patterns always fight to maintain themselves before they transform. Days 4 through 7 typically bring moments of remembrance mixed with moments of forgetting. You might wake up in your old way but remember the practice before getting out of bed, giving yourself a second chance to begin gently. You might find yourself looking forward to those first conscious moments, anticipating the softness instead of dreading the harshness. Your body begins to remember what it feels like to be spoken to with love first thing in the morning. Weeks 2 through 4 often bring the first clear evidence that something fundamental is shifting. You may find yourself naturally waking up a few minutes before your alarm, not with anxiety about the coming day, but with quiet anticipation. Your first thoughts may still be concerns or tasks, but they arrive with less urgency, less fear attached to them. You begin to notice that your mornings affect your entire day differently, that starting gently creates a kind of buffer that helps you meet challenges with more stability. Months 2 through 3 are where the practice typically deepens into identity. You stop having to remember to be gentle with yourself upon awakening and start naturally being gentle. The harsh morning critic that once seemed so powerful begins to feel like an old voice from someone else's life. You may find yourself sleeping more deeply, trusting that consciousness will return softly. Your family or housemates may comment that you seem different in the mornings, lighter somehow, more present and less frantic. Months 4 through 6 represent the integration phase, where waking up gently becomes simply who you are rather than what you practice. You no longer think about choosing different first thoughts because your first thoughts have naturally become kinder. You have become a person who wakes up in love with life rather than in resistance to it. This shift in morning identity often catalyzes changes throughout your entire day, your relationships, your sense of what is possible in your life. But this journey is not linear, and I want you to understand that recurrence of old patterns is not failure, but part of the healing process. There will be mornings when grief or worry or physical pain makes gentle awakening feel impossible. There will be times when external stress pulls you back into old patterns of morning panic. These moments are not setbacks. They are opportunities to practice compassion with yourself for being human, for having difficult days, for still learning how to love yourself consistently. When these mornings come, and they will come, your response determines whether they become detours or deeper teachings. If you wake up harshly and immediately criticize yourself for not being gentle, you create a double layer of self-attack. But if you notice the harsh awakening and gently redirect, saying something like, "Oh, there is that old voice. Good morning anyway, dear one," you transform even the difficult mornings into acts of love. Recovery from old patterns becomes faster and gentler each time. What once might have led to days of self-criticism now becomes a single moment of noticing and choosing differently. You develop what I call morning resilience, the ability to meet whatever arises in consciousness with fundamental kindness toward yourself, even when everything feels hard. Remember that you are not trying to create perfect mornings. You are learning to bring love to whatever kind of morning you are having. Some mornings will feel like poetry, soft and full of gratitude. Some mornings will feel like practice, requiring conscious effort to choose gentleness over criticism. Both kinds of mornings are sacred when met with self-compassion. If you are finding yourself in this journey already, if these words are stirring recognition of your own morning patterns and possibilities, write in the comments where you are right now. Perhaps it is Day 1, choosing to begin gently, or Week 3, already feeling different when I wake up, or back to Day 1 after forgetting, but starting again with love. Your declaration of where you are in this process anchors your intention and becomes an inspiration for others who are walking this same path of learning to wake up as their own best friend. Creating new patterns requires patience with the process and celebration of small victories. Every single morning that you remember to speak to yourself with love, even if it feels forced or strange, you are rewiring decades of conditioning. You are teaching your nervous system that consciousness can be safe, that awakening can be a homecoming instead of a battleground. As you begin to practice gentle awakening consistently, 5 specific obstacles will arise to test your commitment to treating yourself with love in those vulnerable first moments of consciousness. These are not random challenges, but predictable patterns that appear whenever someone begins to disrupt the old system of morning self-criticism. When you recognize them as they arise, they lose much of their power to derail your practice. The first obstacle I call automatic urgency. This is the voice that appears the moment you begin to wake up gently, telling you that there is no time for this tenderness, that you must immediately begin thinking about everything that needs to be done today. You will be lying there, perhaps with your hand on your heart, beginning to whisper good morning to yourself, when suddenly your mind will flood with tasks, deadlines, worries, and the familiar feeling that you are already behind before you have even gotten out of bed. When automatic urgency appears, which it will, pause and remind yourself of this truth. 30 seconds of morning gentleness creates hours of daily peace. The few moments you spend greeting yourself with love are not stolen from productivity. They are the foundation that makes real productivity possible. When you begin your day fighting yourself, everything becomes harder. When you begin your day as your own ally, everything flows more easily. Tell the urgent voice, these moments of love are not luxury, they are necessity. The second obstacle is morning skepticism, the voice that tells you this simple practice cannot possibly change anything real in your life. Your problems will still be there, your challenges will still exist, your circumstances will not magically improve just because you whisper kind words to yourself upon awakening. This voice sounds rational and practical, but it misses something crucial about how transformation actually works. When morning skepticism arises, remember this: how you begin your day is how you live your day. You are not trying to change external circumstances with gentle morning words. You are changing your internal response to whatever circumstances arise. A person who wakes up in peace moves through difficulty differently than a person who wakes up in panic. The challenges may be the same, but your capacity to meet them with clarity and stability is completely different when you start from a foundation of self-love rather than self-criticism. The third obstacle appears when you forget to practice gentle awakening and then attack yourself for forgetting. I call this the guilt of forgetting, and it is perhaps the most insidious obstacle because it uses your desire to be loving with yourself as a weapon against yourself. You will wake up in your old pattern of harsh thoughts, remember the practice, and then immediately criticize yourself for not remembering sooner, for not being consistent, for failing at something so simple. When the guilt of forgetting appears, and it will appear, respond with immediate tenderness. Remembering now is perfect timing. Beginning again now is beginning again with love. Every moment offers a fresh start, including this moment, even if you have forgotten 100 times before. Forgetting is not failure. It is part of learning. Self-compassion includes compassion for your very human tendency to sometimes forget to be compassionate with yourself. The fourth obstacle I call progress comparison, the tendency to measure your morning transformation against some imaginary timeline or against other people's experiences. You may find yourself thinking that you should be further along by now, that other people seem to master self-love more quickly, that your progress is too slow or too inconsistent to matter. This comparison steals the joy from every small victory and makes your journey feel inadequate instead of miraculous. When progress comparison arises, return to this truth. Every soul awakens at its own pace, in its own way, in its own time. Your morning practice is not a race or a competition. It is a daily gift you give to yourself, and gifts are not measured by speed of delivery, but by the love with which they are given. Your gentle morning today matters more than anyone else's gentle morning yesterday. Your willingness to begin again matters more than how many times you have begun again. The fifth obstacle typically appears when you have been practicing for several weeks and beginning to feel real shifts in your morning consciousness. I call this the crisis test, because life seems to send a particular challenge right when you are starting to trust that mornings can be peaceful. Perhaps you receive difficult news, face a deadline crisis, or wake up with physical pain. Your old mind will tell you that this proves gentle awakening is only for easy days, that real life requires harsh morning vigilance. When the crisis test appears, and it always appears, this is your opportunity to discover that self-love is not a fair weather practice, but the foundation that holds you steady in any weather. Especially when life is difficult, especially when you feel scared or sad or overwhelmed, you need to be your own ally rather than your own critic. Speak to yourself even more gently during hard times. This is difficult, dear one, and we will face it together. I am here with you, and we do not have to carry this alone. Each of these obstacles carries a hidden gift when met with awareness instead of resistance. Automatic urgency teaches you the difference between true necessity and manufactured crisis. Morning skepticism invites you to trust your direct experience over your analytical mind. Guilt of forgetting offers countless opportunities to practice self-forgiveness. Progress comparison points you back to your own unique journey. The crisis test reveals that love is not fragile, but the strongest force available in any situation. These obstacles do not appear to stop your progress. They appear to deepen it, to strengthen your commitment to treating yourself with love, even when every old pattern tries to convince you that criticism is safer, more familiar, more practical. When you recognize these voices as they arise and respond with gentle firmness instead of belief or argument, you build the kind of morning resilience that nothing can shake. Transformation through gentle morning practice happens so gradually that many people miss the signs of change, thinking they are not progressing when actually everything is shifting. I want to teach you to recognize the subtle evidence that your morning practice is rewiring not just your awakening, but your entire relationship with consciousness itself. The invisible signs appear first, often weeks before you consciously notice any difference. Your body begins to relax automatically upon awakening, not because you tell it to, but because it begins to trust that consciousness will be safe. The time between opening your eyes and feeling the weight of daily concerns starts to expand, creating tiny pockets of peace that were not there before. Your sleep itself may deepen as your nervous system learns that awakening will be gentle rather than jarring. You might notice that your dreams begin to shift, becoming less anxious or chaotic and more narrative, more peaceful. This happens because your subconscious mind, which creates your dreams, is receiving different messages about safety and love through your morning practice. Even your sleeping mind begins to relax when it trusts that waking will bring kindness instead of criticism. These changes in sleep and dreams are often the first indicators that something fundamental is transforming in your relationship with consciousness. The internal signs become noticeable usually within 2 to 4 weeks of consistent practice. Your first thought upon awakening may still be about tasks or concerns, but it arrives with less urgency, less fear attached to it. Instead of immediately feeling behind or overwhelmed, you may find yourself taking a breath before engaging with the day's requirements. You begin to have a choice about how quickly you move from sleep into activity, and that choice feels spacious rather than rushed. You may notice that you no longer reach for your phone immediately upon awakening, not because you force yourself to resist, but because there is suddenly something more interesting than external stimulation. The simple experience of being conscious, of breathing, of existing in your own body, without needing to immediately escape into distraction or obligation. Your internal dialogue throughout the day begins to carry traces of the gentleness you practice each morning. When you make a mistake during the day, instead of immediately attacking yourself, you might pause and think, what would I say to myself if this were my gentle awakening moment? This transfer of morning compassion into daily self-talk is one of the most reliable signs that your practice is taking root not just in your mornings, but in your entire way of being with yourself. The external signs typically become visible to others before you fully recognize them yourself. Family members or housemates may comment that you seem less rushed or irritable in the mornings. Co-workers might notice that you arrive at work with a different energy, less frantic, more centered. You may find that your morning interactions with others become easier, more pleasant, less charged with the stress that used to carry over from harsh awakening into your relationships. Your entire morning routine may begin to flow more smoothly. Instead of fighting with traffic or feeling frustrated by delays, you might find yourself moving through morning activities with more patience, more presence. This happens not because external circumstances improve, but because you are no longer starting your day in a state of internal conflict. When you are not at war with yourself, the world feels less hostile, less like something to defend against, and more like something to move through with grace. You may notice that opportunities seem to appear more frequently, that people respond to you differently, that solutions to problems come more easily. This is not magic, but mathematics, the simple equation that when you begin each day from a place of peace rather than panic, you make different choices, notice different possibilities, attract different experiences. Peace is magnetic, and when you consistently generate peace in your most vulnerable morning moments, that magnetism affects everything that follows. I want to tell you about someone named Garrett, a man who discovered these signs of transformation in a way that surprised him completely. Garrett was a 47-year-old construction supervisor who had been waking up angry for as long as he could remember. Not angry at anyone in particular, just angry at having to wake up, angry at facing another day of responsibility and physical demand, angry at the alarm clock and the early hour and the immediate need to move his tired body into action. Garrett started the practice of gentle awakening reluctantly after his teenage daughter told him she was tired of hearing him groan and curse every morning when the alarm went off. He felt embarrassed that his daughter had to witness his daily resentment at being alive, so he agreed to try whispering something kind to himself before getting out of bed, though he felt ridiculous doing it. For the first 2 weeks, Garrett dutifully whispered good morning to himself, but felt nothing except foolish. He was ready to quit the practice when something unexpected happened. He was driving to work one morning, caught in the usual traffic jam that had frustrated him for years, when he realized he was not angry. Not calm exactly, but not angry either. He was just sitting in traffic, breathing, waiting, without the familiar rage that usually filled his chest during delays. That was when Garrett understood that something had been changing without his conscious awareness. He began paying attention to other morning moments and noticed that he had stopped slamming cabinet doors while making coffee. He had stopped muttering complaints under his breath while getting dressed. He was still tired, still facing a demanding day, but the edge of resentment that had colored every morning activity for decades was simply gone. His crew at work began commenting that he seemed different, less likely to snap at small mistakes, more patient with questions from new workers. His daughter told him she had started looking forward to breakfast together because he was not radiating frustration anymore. Garrett had not been trying to change his relationships or his work dynamics. He had simply been whispering kind words to himself each morning. But that simple practice had rippled through every aspect of his daily life. 6 months later, Garrett told me something that stays with me still. I thought morning was my enemy, but morning was just waiting for me to stop attacking myself the second I became conscious. When I learned to wake up as my own friend instead of my own critic, everything else got easier. Not because life got easier, but because I got easier to live with, starting with being easier for me to live with myself. This is the power of recognizing signs of transformation when they appear. When you notice that mornings feel different, that your internal dialogue has softened, that your daily interactions flow more smoothly, you are not just observing change, you are encouraging more change through recognition and gratitude. What you acknowledge grows stronger. When you celebrate the smallest shifts towards self-love, you create momentum for deeper shifts to follow. Pay attention not just to dramatic differences, but to subtle ones. Notice if you sleep slightly more deeply. Notice if you reach for your phone less urgently upon awakening. Notice if you move through your morning routine with fractionally less resistance. These small changes are not small at all. They are the building blocks of a completely different relationship with consciousness, with daily life, with your own precious existence. I want to tell you about a woman whose transformation, through gentle morning practice, was so complete that it still moves me to tears when I remember her story. Her name was Paloma, and when she first came to understand these teachings, she was 34 years old, divorced, working 2 jobs to support her 2 young children, and waking up every single morning with what she described as a heart full of dread. Paloma had been waking up the same way for over 8 years, ever since her divorce left her solely responsible for her family's survival. The moment consciousness returned each day, her mind would immediately begin the familiar inventory of fear. How much money was left in checking, whether her older son was struggling in school, whether her ex-husband would make this month's child support payment, whether she had the energy to face another day of juggling work schedules and childcare and bills, and the exhausting effort of holding everything together alone. She described her morning thoughts as a storm that would sweep her up before she was fully awake. By the time she got out of bed, her nervous system was already flooded with stress hormones, her shoulders were tight with tension, and she moved through her morning routine like someone preparing for battle rather than someone beginning a new day. Her children had learned not to speak to her until after she had coffee, because morning Paloma was short-tempered and overwhelmed before anything had even gone wrong. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in October. Paloma's 5-year-old daughter climbed into bed with her just as the alarm went off, wanting to snuggle and tell her about a dream. Paloma's first response was irritation that her daughter had interrupted the few seconds she usually took to mentally prepare for the day's challenges. She found herself saying sharply, "Not now, honey. Mommy needs to think," and watched her daughter's face fall with disappointment. In that moment, lying in bed with her child curled against her, Paloma realized she had become someone she did not want to be. She was so consumed with worry about providing for her children that she was not actually present with them. She was so focused on surviving each day that she was not living any of her days. She was teaching her children that mornings were something to endure rather than embrace. That consciousness was a burden rather than a gift. That night, after her children were asleep, Paloma sat in her kitchen and made a decision that felt both desperate and hopeful. She decided to try something her friend had mentioned weeks earlier about speaking gently to herself first thing in the morning. It sounded insignificant compared to her massive life challenges, but she was willing to try anything that might help her become the mother she wanted to be, rather than the stressed, reactive person she had become. The next morning, before opening her eyes, before allowing her mind to begin its familiar storm of worry, Paloma placed her hand on her heart and whispered the words that felt most true to her in that moment. "Good morning, brave one. You have done so much already. We will figure out today together." The words felt strange and forced, like she was talking to someone else, but she repeated them anyway because she had promised herself she would try. For the first week, the practice felt artificial and pointless. Paloma would whisper her gentle words, then immediately fall into her old patterns of morning anxiety. But she noticed one small thing. There was now a moment, however brief, between waking up and falling into worry. A tiny pause where she remembered she had a choice about how to greet her own consciousness. By the second week, something subtle was shifting. Paloma began to look forward to that moment of self-compassion, even though it felt forced. Her daughter, climbing into bed in the mornings, stopped feeling like an interruption and started feeling like a gift. Instead of immediately thinking about everything that could go wrong during the day, she would sometimes find herself noticing the morning light through her bedroom window or feeling grateful that she had slept through the night. The third week brought the first major test. Paloma woke up to discover her car would not start, threatening to make her late for both jobs and disrupt the carefully orchestrated schedule that kept her life functioning. Her old response would have been immediate panic and self-criticism for not having money for car repairs. Instead, she found herself placing her hand on her heart and saying, "This is hard, brave one, but we have handled hard things before." The situation was still stressful, but she moved through it with more clarity and less chaos than usual. By the 6th week, Paloma's children began commenting that she was different in the mornings. Her son said she seemed happier when she woke up. Her daughter started asking if they could snuggle for a few minutes before getting ready for school, something she had stopped requesting months earlier when morning Paloma was too rushed and irritable for affection. 3 months into the practice, Paloma experienced what she later described as a miracle morning. She woke up naturally, 5 minutes before her alarm, not with dread, but with curiosity about what the day might bring. Her first thought was not about problems to solve, but about her children sleeping peacefully in the next room. She lay there for those 5 minutes, hand on heart, feeling something she had not experienced in years, genuine gratitude for being alive, for being their mother, for having another day to love them and provide for them and be present with them. She realized that morning that her life circumstances had not changed dramatically. She was still a single mother working 2 jobs, still facing financial stress and daily challenges. But she was no longer waging war against her own consciousness. She was no longer starting each day as her own enemy. The problems were still there, but her capacity to meet them had completely transformed. She felt like she was living her life rather than just surviving it. 6 months later, Paloma was offered a better job with flexible hours that allowed her to work from home 2 days a week. A year later, she met someone who became a loving stepfather to her children. These external changes did not happen because she spoke gently to herself each morning, but her gentle morning practice made her available for opportunities and relationships that she might have missed when she was consumed with survival anxiety. 2 years after beginning her morning practice, Paloma told me something that captures the essence of this entire transformation. "I thought my problem was that life was too hard for me to handle. But my real problem was that I was making life harder by fighting myself every single morning. When I learned to wake up as my own ally instead of my own critic, I discovered I was strong enough for whatever life brought. I had always been strong enough. I just needed to stop depleting that strength by attacking myself the moment I became conscious. This is what becomes possible when you consistently practice gentle awakening. Not that life becomes perfect or challenges disappear, but that you become someone who can meet whatever arises from a foundation of self-love rather than self-criticism. You discover that the strength you need for your life was always there, waiting for you to stop using it against yourself and start using it on your own behalf. Paloma's story is not unique or magical. It is what happens when someone decides to treat their own consciousness with the same tenderness they would offer to someone they love deeply. Every person who commits to gentle awakening discovers their own version of this transformation, their own way of moving from survival to presence, from enduring their mornings to embracing them. Take a moment now to place your hand over your heart, as we have done together throughout this journey. Feel the steady rhythm there, that faithful beating that has continued through every word we have shared, through every realization you have had, through every moment of recognition that mornings can be different, that consciousness can be safe, that awakening can be a homecoming rather than a battlefield. You have been listening for nearly 60 minutes to words about transformation, but something much more profound has been happening. You have been transforming. With every breath you have taken while considering the possibility of gentle awakening, with every moment you have allowed yourself to imagine speaking to your own consciousness with love, you have been planting seeds in the most fertile soil of your being. This is not information you have received. This is remembering you have experienced. You are remembering what you knew before the world taught you, that mornings should be harsh, that consciousness should be criticized, that awakening should feel like preparation for battle. You are remembering the truth that consciousness is a gift, that your awareness is precious, that the moment of waking is sacred and deserves to be treated as such. Now I want you to breathe with me 3 times as we seal this understanding, not just in your mind, but in your body, in your nervous system, in the deepest layers of your being where true change takes root. With your hand on your heart, breathe in slowly, feeling the air enter your lungs like a blessing. As you exhale, release any doubt that you deserve to wake up gently. Breathe in again, filling yourself with the possibility of peaceful mornings. Exhale any resistance to loving your own consciousness. One more time, breathe in the truth that awakening can be beautiful. Exhale everything that tells you otherwise. Now I want you to speak these words with me, first as a whisper, then with growing certainty, then with absolute authority. These are not affirmations you hope will become true. They are declarations of what already is true and has always been true, even when you forgot. Whisper with me now. I wake up in love. I wake up in love. I wake up in love. Now speak with normal voice, as a statement of fact. I wake up in love. I wake up in love. I wake up in love. Now declare with complete authority, as if you are announcing to the universe who you are and have always been. I wake up in love. I wake up in love. I wake up in love. Feel those words reverberating through your chest, through your entire body. Your nervous system is receiving these words not as something you hope to become, but as recognition of something you already are. A being who deserves to be greeted each morning with love, starting with the love you give to yourself. Let us declare your identity now, not who you are trying to become, but who you have always been, even in the mornings when you forgot. I am someone who awakens gently. I am someone who greets consciousness with love. I am someone who treats my own awareness as sacred. This is not aspiration. This is recognition. This is not future hope. This is present truth. And now we seal this understanding in the ancient way, with words that make permanent what has been realized. And so it is sealed in love. And so it shall remain in peace. And so it cannot be otherwise, for love is the only truth. And so it is. And so it is. And so it is. If your mornings are already changing as we speak, if something in your consciousness is softening toward the possibility of gentle awakening, then you may want to continue this exploration weekly. There are always new pathways to peace being shared here, new ways of discovering that life loves you and wants you to love your life in return. Subscribe when your heart says yes, not because you should, but because something in you recognizes the value of learning to live in love with your own existence. In the comments, if you feel moved to do so, declare your new beginning with whatever words feel true to you. It might be, Day 1, I choose gentle awakening. Or, I am ready to be my own morning friend. Or, I wake up in love, starting now. Your written declaration anchors your intention in the physical world and becomes a beacon of encouragement for others who are learning to greet their own consciousness with tenderness. If this teaching has touched something deep in your heart, if you want to support this work of helping people remember how to love themselves, there is a link in the first pinned comment where you can offer whatever feels right to you. This is not obligation, but opportunity, not requirement, but invitation. When love flows in one direction, it naturally creates space for love to flow in return. But remember always, you already have everything you need. The rest is just gratitude made visible. As we close this sacred time together, I want you to know that your mornings will never be the same again. Not because I have given you something new, but because you have remembered something ancient. The truth that consciousness is a gift, that awareness is precious, that awakening deserves to be celebrated rather than criticized. Life has always loved you. It was simply waiting for you to love your own mornings, your own awareness, your own beautiful return to consciousness each day. Tomorrow when you wake up, and every morning after that, you have a choice. You can greet yourself with criticism or with kindness. You can begin your day at war with yourself or in love with yourself. You can treat awakening as burden or as blessing, The choice is always yours, and choosing love is always available, no matter what happened yesterday, no matter how you have awakened for years before this moment. Your new life does not begin when you master this practice perfectly. It begins the next time you open your eyes and choose to speak to yourself with love instead of criticism. It begins the next time you place your hand on your heart and whisper good morning to the one who has been with you through everything. It begins now, in this breath, in this awareness, in this gentle and revolutionary choice to wake up in love. And so it is, beloved, and so it is.